for capstone project teams for the spring semester. And the capstone project is meant to be a learning and action experience that gives students in the UIC Master of Public Administration and Master of Public Policy programs the opportunity to engage in meaningful work in a real world setting. So we here at FTA threw our hat in the ring, and we were lucky enough to be selected for the program. And even luckier to get to work with the UIC team that you're going to meet shortly. And the session for today is going to last about an hour. And I believe, Bill, you may have started the recording and the transcription. Is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. So we are recording the session and also having it transcribed. This will be mainly for the benefit of our UIC partners, so they can help us kind of go through the feedback we received from you today and then provide some recommendations for the FTA to pursue in the fiscal year 22 and next fiscal year as well. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Amanda, Jackie, and Emily so they can introduce themselves and also hear a little bit from you.
Thank you, Jay. I hope everyone can hear me, but we are super excited to be meeting with you guys. We looked at a couple of documents of you guys, but we figured it would be more personal to actually hear from you guys. So we just want to introduce ourselves. Like they said, we are the Capstone team that's working with the FTA, just to assess the technical assistance that could be used to better assist you guys. And like I said, my name's Amanda. I'm an MPA student, and I'll be graduating in the summer. My concentration is in financial management, and my favorite food as a child is eggs mixed with like anything you could think of. I don't like vegetables, but somehow when they're mixed with eggs, it's all right. And I'm from Chicago, so yeah, Jackie and Emily, you guys could go.
Okay, I'll go. Nice to meet you all, and thank you guys for coming. It means a lot to us. We're really excited to hear from you. My name is Emily Spangler. I'm a Master of Public Policy student specializing in transportation policy. So this is very exciting to me as a project. I graduate in May. My hometown is Sterling, Illinois. It's close to Iowa, but now I live in Chicago. My favorite food as a child, I was oddly obsessed with salad, which is very weird for a four-year-old. So don't really like salad anymore. I got out saladed. So nice to meet you all, and we're looking forward to talking. And Jackie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jackie Safford. I'm a Chicago hometown favorite, home of the Chicago Sox. I live in Bronzeville. My favorite food is everybody's favorite food, hopefully, pizza with sausage and pineapple. That's my favorite. And I look forward to working with you. I'm an MPA student, and my area of concentration is emergency management.
Thank you guys. So I don't know if you guys would rather type in the chat, but we would like to know your hometown and favorite food as a child before we get started, because it's just fun.
What's your favorite food, Andy?
Yeah, and I think with we have an awesome crowd.
Right?
We have 37 people on. So if people want to introduce themselves via the chat, you can just type in maybe your hometown and your favorite food. That'd be great.
You're not going to stay on?
If it keeps going.
I'm not participating in the chat.
Just for those, if you're not speaking, if you could mute, that'd be great. So Neil, your favorite food as a kid was lasagna, but not anymore?
Well, as you get older, can't really eat like you like to eat. So I still like lasagna. I just can't have it as often as I like, but I still love it. My mother makes the best lasagna, and she makes it like once every 10 years, but I do love it, and I do have a recipe. So once a year for me.
Yeah, we
You're
might have to
also-
have a competition because my my wife makes a really good lasagna too, and like your situation, she only makes it like once every 4 years. So
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Let's do it.
As a part of our project, you're obligated to share the recipe also. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that. We'll see what Mom thinks about that recipe.
Now, Emily, the it's not going to be published or anything, right? Like this is just, yeah, okay. All right. All right. Well, everyone kind of feel free to continue because even though I ate lunch, I'm definitely getting hungry by seeing all of this, and there's some good stuff on there. But I do want to thank you all again for joining. So let's move forward and talk a little bit about the purpose of today's session. And like I said at the top, from the FTA's perspective and our UIC partners, we want to do a bunch of listening here. We're interested in hearing about what areas of our programs and our planning requirements you would like to know more about. Our UIC team is going to be taking the feedback we hear today and developing a recommendation for the Region 5 office to pursue. They're going to prepare a presentation for us in a short report. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, and our UIC team is going to facilitate the session. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about your familiarity with federal requirements, and then would like to hear a little bit about your interactions with stakeholders, including us at the Region 5 office. And then finally, the best ways you like to learn, whether that's through webinars or one-on-one sessions. This last part of the agenda is going to be important for our UIC partners because they're going to be preparing a recommendation not only on content of what you want to learn more about, but also the format. So that'll be an important part of our session today as well. So before I turn it over to the UIC team, does anyone have any questions that they wanted to bring up before we get going? And also, if anyone has any questions while we're going through the session, please don't hesitate to either jump right in or raise your hand. We'll be kind of monitoring that in MS Teams as well. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to the UIC team right now.
Okay, so the first one is familiarity with federal regulations. So this is kind of like the nitty-gritty stuff that we wanted to get into, and I just wanted to show some guiding questions before I show like a list of all of them. So a couple of them that we have are there specific federal planning programs and their requirements that you do not fully understand? What are 3 or more topics that you may need more information or training on? What are 3 or more topics that you feel your organization excels in? And could you explain each program and at least some of their requirements to someone outside of your organization? So I know we've been kind of listing them in the chat, but if you guys do want to turn off your mic and share more about a specific one or a couple of them, that would be great. So we can go to the next slide.
So I'm not
yeah, if you
sure.
guys want to, oh,
I'm sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you guys want to just take a couple of seconds to look at them and kind of reflect on any that you think you can improve on, or which ones you excel in. But we can start talking about them instead of me reading each one.
I should say too, no, nothing is right or wrong. We're just really trying to get your feedback so we can give it to the FTA. So feel free to speak up.
I'll start. How you guys doing? I was looking over your reports, and I wanted to ask you guys, how do you feel about the performance-based planning program? Is there any barriers to like setting it up? Because I saw that in some of the reports we're having problems making measures. So is that something that maybe y'all would like more training on? Because that's kind of tough to create measures that are in tune with the rules and regulations. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I was gonna say, I think that would be good to have more information on that. I can't really say that I'm totally proficient. I deal more with the communications and engagement side of things. So my department is more specific to the public participation plan, the MTP and the TIP. And so I think that would be something I would be interested in having more information and training on. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and Cole, I see your hand up. I'll go to you in just a second. The reports Jackie mentioned is the UIC team had the pleasure of reviewing the latest planning certification review report that all of you did or had done. So they reviewed the recommendations and commendations for all of the latest planning certification reviews that your MPOs have done. So Cole, I think you had something?
Yeah, I guess I would, related to performance-based planning and programming, it's, I think there could be some additional guidance on how the performance-based planning translates to programming decision makings. So that also relates to the TIP development, the second item on the list here. Oftentimes we want to believe at the federal level, I think, that performance-based planning leads to better decision makings about investments, but there's so many complex players that it's really hard for the MPO to exert any kind of willpower over the programming decision making. And so I think, guidance on how you could do that or something like that would be helpful.
Thanks, Cole.
Amanda,
Yes,
sorry.
that's great input. That's like really good input, just trying to see how those performance-based measures translate into how the transportation improvement plan gets put together and how the funding money gets allocated. That's great feedback. That is something that we should probably do more training on, maybe how that translate into federal or funding dollars.
I was going to say, Amanda, I don't mean to like speak over you because this is your part. But I guess too, like some food for thought. If you're, trying to tell somebody that's brand new on your team about any of these programs, are you able to explain it to them without looking at any notes or anything? And if that's a yes, that's awesome. If that's a no, that's awesome too. That's okay. That's the point of this.
And
So
I'm
I'm-
really just kind of going off of you, just like to even have notes, you know, because I feel like if I was learning this, I probably won't have notes on a specific topic, but like would need them eventually. So if there's anything like that too that you kind of need to go back and get like that basic work again.
Also, I was wondering if you guys had any problems with the forms itself, like getting the planning process started, and what tools do you think would be helpful in helping you expedite the plans and get through the planning process?
I don't know if the people want us to use the chat or not. I don't want to be the only one speaking here, but kind of building off of my previous point, we find oftentimes that federal webinars aren't super translatable. We have a pretty complex, large region. So for FTA to think about having trainings at different region size levels, so that, if you're over 2 million, it might be more applicable to go to a certain training than one for like a small urban area. So that would just be really helpful, so that we don't have to sit through, an MPO in rural Iowa giving us feedback on how they do their bus programming, and we're like, well, this is not super helpful. This is like very basic stuff for us. So that's the struggle that we have.
And I think
So would you say that maybe more trainings geared towards your particular MPO?
Just tailored to the types of issues that vary. And I don't know if size is the right distinguishing factor, but that would be something to look into, is whether larger MPOs should have different trainings than maybe smaller ones, and not trying to have a one size fits all training approach.
Do you see now saying that yeah, it's not a one size fits all, because each MPO is different and deal with different types of issues, some more air quality, some population and density, and congestion management might be more needed in one part than the other. So what problems have you seen, or what things have you seen that you might think that you would benefit from? Like, what would you think you would benefit from as far as the planning process? What do you think that you could use more expertise in, or you need more training in, or would like somebody to come down and talk to you more about, so you can have a better understanding? Because that's what we try to do. We're trying to pinpoint what each MPO may need.
I think Thomas made a good comment in the chat. Some of this stuff, the MPOs sort of can do in their sleep. So it's also sort of figuring out a way to sort of reach some of the other stakeholders, including the actual transit operators or the state DOTs, or cities or counties as well. And I think that's a really good point as well. So for those of you who would like to add to the discussion in the chat, we're kind of watching that as well.
I'll jump in here. So My name is Rima. I'm at the Peoria MPO, so we're in Central Illinois. On the other side of that, the people who did a lot of these required documents in our office had left recently just for different reasons. So unfortunately, we had to kind of learn them from the ground up, and that was very difficult. So it's great to have people who have done this for a while, but I think also it's good to have a secondary person in place just in case the person leaves. Um, and also, I've been working with the 5310 program, and that, at least to me, was very difficult to learn from the ground up. They do have some training documents, but many of them are tens or sometimes hundreds of pages long, so it's hard to know where to start. So maybe a 101 could be helpful.
Yeah, and that commentary actually helps a lot because something that we've been thinking about was just that a lot of these requirements seem very like wordy and lengthy, so maybe shortening it to be, adding visuals, adding different structures so that it's easy to understand, like how you said, like from the ground up, instead of just repeating the same words and process.
I was going to say that's a great point. That's kind of the challenge. We've had a lot of new people coming in and out, and being able to communicate this to the everyday person, kind of about our processes from an engagement perspective, it does sometimes become a challenge because a lot of times everything is kind of more in the technical terms, and so trying to distill some of this information down so that it makes sense when we're talking to new reporters or talking to just new staff or people who may not be involved in the routine process of this, it would be helpful to kind of have something a little shorter, or just something that helps us with some kind of sound bites or talking points that everyday people can understand.
And I think we had a hand up. Ben, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. I'll jump on the 5310 bandwagon here. I've dealt with administering 5310 for many years in a couple states, once not in an MPO, and so through the DOT, but still doing the coordinated planning, and now with an MPO and doing that. I don't find the administration part of it to be that difficult, but luckily we don't, in neither of my roles have I had to deal with the actual reporting. Someone else has gotten to deal with that. But I think that something that would really help, and this came up during our certification review, is that the reporting requirements and the certification requirements on the subrecipients are very confusing, and quite honestly onerous for small operators, especially for nonprofits. There are a lot of nonprofits that are specialized service providers. They would love to have their own vehicle. It is just way too overwhelming for them to be able to deal with anything beyond the application. And when they start getting into like, oh, now we need a Title VI plan, and now we need to have this, and we have site visits and audits. And so a lot of those operators, when they learn that, just run screaming from the room. They don't want anything to do with it. And we honestly have a hard time spending our $5310 because we aren't getting applications from a lot of those agencies. And when I guess the good side of that is that when somebody mistakenly signs up and gets on the hook, all of a sudden they've realized that since they're on the hook for those reporting requirements, they might as well get another vehicle. They might as well apply for CRISA funding for a position. They might as well go whole hog because they're already on the hook. And so one thing that I think would be very helpful is if MPOs and other 5310 administrators were provided with sort of clear-cut 1 or 2 page to hand out to potential recipients that explains those requirements a little bit more clearly, that provides links to more information. But that, you know, because it's right out there that you're going to have to register with Dun and Bradstreet, and you're going to have to get this SMS number, and it's going to take, you know, you time and filling out all these things. When I get, you know, I've had people who are limited English proficiency, they're trying to run a small business, they're trying to deal with a pandemic and keep everybody safe, and they're like, oh, we're going to get this free money. And you know, we have language assistance available, but that gap of trying to get that information to them in a way that, one, doesn't scare them, but two, is transparent and alerts them to what they're signing up for, I think would be really helpful. Beyond that, it would be really great if we could just figure out how to make it so that 5310 recipients, especially nonprofits, didn't have to have all of those reporting requirements, because it really does limit our ability to spend those dollars where they're needed the most.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, well put. And you know, I'd also add that I really appreciate everyone, you know, contributing verbally and in the chat, because I can see already that this session is helping in a way where you're getting feedback from peers as well. You know, so I'd encourage you to kind of take a look and connect on your own too, because I think that it's always good to hear what others are doing, right? And I've seen a lot of good sort of collaboration going on in the chat too. So I appreciate everyone doing that.
I guess one other topic that I was most interested in to hear about was the public participation plan. Just because I know that public engagement is really hard, and I don't know if you guys have any ideas of how the FTA could help you make it less hard.
Actually, on to that point, I have a question. I'm Bill Wheeler. Actually, for those who don't know me, I'm also a community planner with FTA in the Region 5 office. You know, with the public participation plan, is there any partnering with the transit agencies? You know, when do you go collaborate and do public transit or do public participation in collaboration, or, you know, how does that work with your particular MPO?
I don't have a direct answer to that. And hi, Bill. But one thing that I think we struggle with sometimes is that this role of the MPO, and Bill knows this, our agency, the major transit provider, is the same agency as the MPO. So we often struggle with what's an MPO function versus the designated recipient function. So some sort of like almost side by side that says, here's what the designated recipients requirements are, here's what the MPO requirements are, and here's how they should interact for each of these products. And, you know, and sometimes it might just be, you know, designated recipients are a stakeholder in this MPO process, but sometimes there's a lot of overlap that's unclear, particularly with the performance-based planning and, you know, development of the TIP. I think those have a lot of overlap with what the transit providers are doing versus the MPO.
Thank you for that, Cole.
I can jump in here. I'm Rima from Peoria, Illinois again. So we just redid our public participation plan last year, and one thing that we decided to do it was still COVID times, so we thought we'd take some best practices from some local nonprofits and community agencies in the area to see what they're doing. So just to add to our repertoire, we incorporated that in our plan.
Hey, this is Jay. I just wanted to jump in and just for a second, a little sidebar on the logistics. Emily, Amanda, and Jackie, I know we've got the two other areas. You know, do we want to say about 3 or 4 more minutes on this one and then move to the second one, or can we do a little more? How are you guys feeling?
I think we can move along. I would like to ask more about the Unified Plan and Work Development sheet. Like, is that I wanted to know, is that uniform enough for them, or do they need something more in depth? Like, if they encountered any issues with that Unified Plan and Work Development, what issues were there, and what do they suggest we do to fix them?
So anybody, any thoughts on UWP development? I would also add that, you know, I know we're throwing a lot out here. I am going to follow up with an email either later today or tomorrow where we're going to give you, you know, a couple more weeks to think about this, and you can provide some written feedback that we'll certainly forward on to our UIC team as they're developing their recommendations. So my point is don't think that this is your last chance. You'll get another bite at the apple. So. All right, should we move along then to the sort of the relationship with the stakeholders?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you guys take it away.
Sure. Okay. So as you all know, so your relationships with your stakeholders are key to a successful work environment and making sure that you can do what you do successfully. So why is this important to you in the organization to start? And then, of course, do you like informal get-togethers or formal step-by-step guides? What processes are best for you guys? I know this is probably a lot and maybe it's changed during the pandemic, but feel free to say. And I see someone's off mute, so I will stop talking.
Hello, my name is Chris Williams. I'm with the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. We have an interesting system here in Southeast Michigan. We have what's called federal aid committees. And so essentially what that is each of the counties in the SEMCOG region, along with the city of Detroit, they kind of go and select their own projects, or they kind of do their own due diligence and then submit those for programming in the TIP or other programs. And then we also include the transit agencies as well. So we meet with them, or they have meetings periodically throughout the year. Some FACs are kind of more active than others, but I believe it's at least quarterly. Some may meet more often than not. So, I think, personally, it's a fairly, it's a pretty good system as far as kind of getting stakeholders together and learning about kind of what they would like to see in their regions or their areas, and what kind of programs or excuse me, what kind of projects they like to see, what kind of things that they like to see in their areas. Sometimes it can get a little, I'll see, like, we want to make sure that we're doing regional coordination. So, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to kind of convey what each of the FACs or whatever the transit agencies are doing within, their own jurisdiction, and how that affects the larger the region. Now, but for the most part, most of the FACs kind of have some cross, I don't want to say membership, but some folks from one county, they attend meetings in the other counties just to kind of know what everyone else is doing across the region. And then where we do see like some instances where regions aren't necessarily communicating with each other, we'll try to step in and kind of be that conduit there as well. So I'd say at least with our system, the FAC system, we meet fairly regularly, and it's kind of working. So it's worked for the however long we've had this system, maybe 30, 40 years so far. So and I'm not entirely sure how other regions do it, how their MPOs do it, but we do kind of have that system built in that where we have at least quarterly meetings.
That was a very in-depth explanation. I appreciate it.
And there's some good feedback coming in on the chat as well. People providing some input on how often they meet and, with whom.
If you want, we can move to the next slide too, because it's on the same topic.
Sure.
Okay,
And
cool. Thanks.
I think, Bill, maybe you were going to take this one, or at least jump in at the beginning here.
Sure. So this next question is focused on, throughout the year, there are plenty of, meetings, work groups, conferences, et cetera, that take place. And we just wanted to get a sense for, are there any meetings specifically that you feel you would like FTA to participate in, to provide some, guidance and technical assistance? We just want to hear from you on that. So, let us know if there are any specific conferences or meetings that throughout the year you feel where FTA should be involved. So I know the states I deal with, I know they typically have an annual MPO conference, and as well as some quarterly MPO meetings. So wasn't sure, and I deal with mainly Minnesota and Wisconsin. I'm not sure how the other states are, or if there's any other meetings or ad hoc groups or anything that you feel FTA should be participating in.
Ben, I think you had something.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I guess, to go back to the previous slide really quickly, I think it's, at least for us, rather ad hoc, depending on kind of what is going on. Currently, I'm meeting with Metro staff 2 or 3 times a week between our regional transportation plan update and TIP amendments and new funding. Madison just saw today from the FTA that Madison got a lovely grant for bus facility project, and so we get to do a TIP amendment on that. And with BRT coming on, we're in constant contact with the City of Madison Department of Transportation, and with WISDOT, maybe not quite as much, but that most of that communication in terms of funding kind of happens through Metro, and so I don't personally have to worry about it as much. And then Bill and I talk a couple times a year, so that's generally my connection with FTA. Thank you, Bill, for that time. And whenever I have questions and weird things coming up, right when COVID started, we had just updated our coordinated plan, and that gets to this slide. And one of the things that came out of that process was that both service providers and transportation providers were really interested in starting to have more communication amongst themselves. And we organized a sort of specialized transportation and service provider conference that was going to be a one-day in-person, and we were going to have all sorts of presentations on dispatch software and funding and all these topics of interest. And then COVID hit, and because everybody works with, immunocompromised populations when you're dealing with specialized transportation, we canceled it. And have not tried to pivot back to that, although I've been thinking that, fingers crossed, maybe we could do it this spring, and kind of get back on track with that. So I would just say, if we're able to make that happen, and if there's interest in the local population of service providers and transportation providers, if they're not just totally, the bandwidth is exhausted because of staffing shortages and everything else, which I know is an issue that's ongoing, love to have somebody from FTA there to perhaps present on something new, or to be able to answer questions and just be there for sort of backup, because I certainly don't know everything about eligibility and how funds can get used. And so that could be a really, really great thing. So thanks for asking. That's it.
Thanks, Ben. And just to kind of tack on to that and what Bill was saying, the one thing that during the pandemic that we've learned is we're getting better at this, this ability to connect virtually. And that'll remain an option, but we hope very soon we'll be traveling more like we were pre-pandemic. It's a little difficult, with all of us being located in Chicago, but I think we've learned that we've got the ability to have more reach at the FTA, with sessions like this. Nothing substitutes for being there in person. And I really hope we can get back to that and hopefully expand it even more. So that's one of the reasons why we're asking this question. And I think this is another question where it might help for you to think. I know a lot of people have put in the chat some ideas, which is great. This is all helpful to us. We can certainly circulate this to our planners in each state. And I think it just opens up more opportunities for us to foster that relationship with you.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? I see there's some good, like Jay said, some good feedback in the chat. I know Jennifer just said she would trade an annual in-person meeting for 4 quarterly virtual meetings. Thank you for that. And like Jay said, the pandemic has kind of exposed all of us to innovative ways of presenting information. So thank you for that, Jennifer.
All right, so why don't we, thanks, Bill. That certainly generated a lot of good feedback. It was also Bill's idea to include this slide. So thank you, Bill. Certainly helpful. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back to this one, and I'll turn it back over to the UIC team.
Yeah. So my internet is acting funky. So can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So everything that's on the screen, we're just asking, so what are some identified limitations to the meetings you've been having? Obviously, the pandemic has impacted this greatly. So you can include that, but honestly, we're kind of looking more so for lack of time, lack of preparedness for the meeting. Maybe not everyone that you want to show up is not showing up. And maybe that's, you know, something that we can address, maybe it's not, but we're interested in hearing that. And secondly, how would you voice your concerns of unfamiliarity with the topic being discussed? Would more listening sessions, I know someone in the comments, Neil, mentioned that there's a listening session in one of the programs, but do you find that this would be helpful in other arenas as well?
I was going to say, I think it would be. I mean, we found that when we've done some of our workshop and listening sessions, I think it's helped to answer any questions that we may have gotten. And like I said, believe it or not, we've gotten a lot of questions from kind of reporters that are kind of covering it, because we usually send a press release announcing different opportunities in terms of public comment or different changes that we're making, and really just sitting down and answering their questions and talking with them, as we found that to be very helpful. We actually did a walkthrough of our MPO process, excuse me, of our MTP process with one of our newest reporters. And they admitted to us, they were like, it's very confusing. We go on the website, we look at the different information that you have. It's very confusing. So having these kind of open house meetings, if you will, has really helped them accurately present information to their various audiences. So I would say, yes, I would be a proponent of having more listening sessions to better understand the needs of specific communities.
That was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm seeing some comments in the chat as well that are being super helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, Ben, you hit on a good point with all of these virtual platforms. Not everyone has the access to them. That's a, that's a limitation to the situation we're in right now.
Microsoft Teams is a good example. City IT prohibits us from using it. So I'm using it on a browser, so I don't have full capabilities. When we did our certification review, and it was hosted by USDOT or by FHWA, and so they use Teams. And then when we hosted our public meeting at night, it was Zoom, and none of them could use it. So
Yeah.
it's just a mess. I don't know what the
Yeah.
answer is, but it sure would be nice if we could all use compatible programs.
Right. Right, kind of to that point, Amanda, Jackie, and Emily, I was going to kind of move on to our sort of the final item on our agenda, which is sort of accessing that knowledge. We good to go ahead?
Yes.
All right, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. The third thing we wanted to know about is accessing your knowledge, or accessing knowledge at work. So we want to know how you learn, what you need to learn, and how we can facilitate learning. So the first question is, how could training sessions impact or work for your team? And let's say you were asked to attend training on a topic and there are many barriers preventing you from attending. How would you work that out? Let's say that you were tasked with presenting information on the topic. Are there any barriers preventing you from training? So are there any training barriers or materials or things that you may need that you do not have? And what are they? And how can we facilitate your learning and training options?
I can say one thing, having been through a lot of trainings with other groups, there are some groups that are more responsive to different learning styles. I, for one, don't do well with just being talked to and trying to like figure it out. I need to be hands-on and need to be looking at my document and having someone like answer questions real time. So the best way for me to learn is more interactive, one-on-one. I know that's really a time constraint for FTA, but I don't do well just hearing a large group presentation and asking like questions that they can't spend time working with me on a response for. So it's better to have smaller one-on-one sessions that can follow up training potentially, but those training sessions are just usually not super helpful.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
I think this is Thomas Dow with NERPC. I think one of the biggest barriers that we have with training is that every MPO has a different staff size. Some MPOs might only have 1 or 2 staff members, and others might have dozens or maybe even 100. And so it's hard to make staff available for training if you have relatively few employees as opposed to a really large MPO. And I think the other difference is that when you have a lot of staff, people tend to specialize in one specific area and they can have a really deep knowledge in that topic area. But if you're in a small MPO, you need to know a lot about a lot of different topics as well. And so it takes time to learn the breadth of things that MPOs are required to do. So I see that as kind of a challenge too. I don't think you can provide training in a one-size-fits-all manner just because of some of the structural differences between the MPOs.
Great answer.
Yeah, this is Rima from Peoria, Illinois, one more time. I agree. I know for us, there's 8 of us in the office and 3 of us are planners, so we definitely wear a lot of hats. I have to jump from different topic to topic throughout the day and the week. So it may be a way to do that is either one-on-one is great, or MPOs of similar size at the same time that could also maybe hit more of the check more of the same boxes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan Weber with FTA, and I work right now with MPOs in Michigan. And one of the things that I've heard is staffing. I don't know if you're all facing that as well, but basically all kinds of training. And then we as the federal FTA and FHWA just issued planning emphasis areas. So there was some real concern with how do they get this incorporated, these new emphasis areas incorporated into their plans, while they're trying to sort of keep everything else afloat. And turnover and pay is one thing that one MPO in particular raised, that they're just unfortunately not competitive with other municipalities or state agencies. So in this time, I feel like, and I have seen it, and it's not just the transportation industry, but there is a lot of movement and shifting. So sometimes that institutional knowledge of people staying at a place for many years and working themselves up and learning the different processes, that sort of goes by the wayside when you've only got somebody with you maybe a year or 2 as opposed to 10. So.
Thanks for the input. Thank you.
This is Thomas Dow again with NERPC. One of the things that is kind of interesting, I think, about the relationship MPOs have with our federal partners is that, your formal role is to come in and do the periodic planning certification reviews where you tell us things that we've done well or things that we've not done well and might need to improve. And you also participate in different meetings along the way during the 4-year period. And I'm wondering if there's some opportunity when we're gearing up to develop an MTP, or we're starting a new cycle on a different work product, if FTA could step in and say, hey, have you thought about doing this? This is something that we noticed one of your peer MPOs is doing at the other end of the state or in one of the neighboring states, and we think it might be applicable to what you're talking about. There may be some opportunities where we could benefit from your continuing process, since you guys observe things over a broader geographic multi-state area than we do, since we're looking within our regions and maybe talking to a few adjacent regions as well. So that maybe that's an opportunity as well.
You know, that's a really great point. You know, when I first started at the FTA, I focused a lot on triennial reviews, you know, which happen every 3 years. And, you know, for that process, FTA is very heavily engaged in between the actual reviews, right? There's workshops on key areas like procurement and things like that. And I think it's an opportunity area for the FTA to, you know, to do more in between those reviews, right? And help MPOs gear up for those certification reviews, and you know, and not just be there every 4 years knocking at your door saying, all right, we're going to take a look now. I think that's a really good point, and certainly an opportunity area for the FTA and FHWA.
Could I ask another question?
Sure.
I was wondering, you were saying that maybe there's opportunities between, you know, the different reviews. And how would you like that interaction between the FTA and the MPOs? What would you like that to look like? Would you like that to be like a webinar, or maybe a one-on-one Zoom meeting with that particular MPO to discuss some, you know, the issues they might be, or the barriers, or whatever issues have come up? What would you like that to look like?
You know, I'm not really sure, Jackie. You know, the other thing to realize about this is, you know, it's not like all 26 TMAs in the Region 5 are on the exact same schedule, right? So you could almost plan it year by year and say, all right, these 6 MPOs have a planning certification review in the next 12 months, and sort of say, all right, for those 6, what are we going to do, you know, to help them prepare for the review, to give them opportunities to learn and to gear up. So short answer is I'm not sure, but I think there's opportunities to sort of look at our overall schedule of planning certification reviews, and maybe do something sort of grouped depending on where people are at in their review cycle. So I'm not really sure on format, but I think it's something we can explore.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we are at 2 o'clock Central, and so I wanted to be respectful of people's time, and keep in mind what I mentioned earlier, and that's that I'm going to send up a follow-up email where we're going to sort of summarize today's discussion, and then also ask you for any additional feedback that you may have. So, you know, expect that either later today or more likely tomorrow to come out, and feel free to respond to me. I'll do that one as a BCC so that when you respond, it'll just come to me. And you know, we'll pass that feedback along. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to me or your assigned community planner directly. Again, our goal is to take all of this feedback that you're giving us and take a look at what the UIC team develops in terms of some recommendations for how the FTA can do better in providing more technical assistance and sort of increasing our presence. It's something we would like to do in FY22 and FY23. Also for updates, I believe Bill, if he hasn't already, is going to add a website that we have where you can sign up for various updates. So I think some of you already do that, but it's another opportunity for you to sort of stay in the loop. But other than that, to close things out, I wanted to give a special thank you to Emily, Jackie, and Amanda. We started working with them a couple months ago, and they have been a joy to work with. They have been very responsive and really helped plan this session. And so we owe them a debt of gratitude, and we know that their recommendations are going to be something that we can certainly use here at the FTA to help you and improve our relationship and improve our information flow. So a big round of applause to Emily, Jackie, and Amanda. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Jay.
And with that, I don't know if Amanda, Jackie, or Emily, you guys wanted to say anything here at the end, or?
Yes,
I
I
just
want
wanted
to
to thank everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your participation, and we will do the best we can to make sure that your concerns and your ideas are translated and communicated to the FTA.
Yes, we have a lot of writing to do, so thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Look for my follow-up email in the next day or two.
Thank you, Jay.
Take care.